Thank you, Councillor. Minister, changes to the tenant-in-situ scheme are of significant concerns for some constituencies who face the very real prospect of homelessness, because a scheme that was working has been efficiently dismantled. When a landlord decided to sell, the local authority could step in, buy the property and keep the family in their home. It was straightforward, it was cost-effective and it worked. But last year, the department made a critical change. Local authorities cannot reclaim the costs of refurbishing the properties they buy under the scheme. That might sound like a minor detail. It is not. It is a decision that is making the scheme unworkable. The result is that councils are walking away from these purchases. They're not walking away because the families don't need a home. They're walking away because the scheme is financially unsustainable for them. In County Clare, this matter is particularly serious. Our private rental stock is older than the national average. Properties in more rural and coastal locations often need more refurbishment than they can be let as social houses. We can see the impact in the numbers. In 2023, this scheme delivered 1,830 acquisitions. In 2024, 1,501. And last year, in 2025, there was only 775 houses delivered. At its peak, the tenant-in-situ scheme accounted for 46% of all homeless prevention activity nationally. By December of last year, that figure had fallen to 11%. In a recent media report, Clare County Council have only spent 1.45 million out of its 4 million allocation, which is very disappointing. I personally know of several cases where the council would not purchase a house because the cost of refurbishing it to modern rental standards. This scheme was one of this state's most effective tools for preventing homelessness. Minister, there should be no different to the public purse where this is achieved through the purchase and renovation of a property they already live in, or moving them in to a new build and renovating it afterwards. People in houses should be the measure of success, not number of houses built. Preventing homelessness is the goal, regardless of what we do. Thank you, Minister.
Thank you. Minister, please.
Thank you, Deputy Cooney, for your query today. I am here answering questions from Minister Brown, and I'm very happy to do so, and I will pass on your thoughts and concerns around the tenant-in-situ scheme too. I wish to thank you for tabling the motion today, and as I said, I'm here on behalf of Minister Brown. Tenancy sustainment and tenancy in situ is not a stand-alone programme or scheme. It is a priority category under the Department of Housing's Social Housing Second-Hand Acquisitions Programme, which helps prevent social housing supported households in the private rental sector from becoming homeless. Such acquisitions are an option for local authorities to support households in the most precarious housing situations. They are and will continue to be available to local authorities for the use as a last resort when all other options have been exhausted. However, they will never be the sole or even the primary option. The default first options must also almost always be securing the sustainment of the tenant with the landlord, securing alternative accommodation through the tenancy sustainment and place finder services, or allocating a local authority or approved housing body tenancy via a new home build or a relet. Where acquisitions are deemed necessary, local authorities will pursue individual priority acquisitions without recourse to the Department once they satisfy the broad parameters and the criteria of the second-hand acquisitions programme. Some $373 million is available for drawdown by local authorities and approved housing bodies under this year's programme. With more than 17,000 persons in emergency homeless accommodation, including more than 5,000 children, the primary focus of this year's programme is to help households exit emergency homeless accommodation into permanent housing. To this end, the largest share of funding available for drawdown, some 150 million, is ring-fenced for acquisitions supporting households and taking them out of homelessness. Thereafter, some 50 million is available to approved housing bodies for urgent acquisitions for older people, for people with disabilities, for caregivers. The remaining 173 million comprises some 157 million for local authority priority acquisitions, including tenant-in-situ purchases, and a contingency of 16 million for local authorities that have drawn down most of their allocation, but can complete further acquisitions and draw down the funding from the department before the end of the year. Clare County Council has been allocated an initial 1.7 million, with 800,000 and 900,000 earmarked for an approved housing body and local authority priority acquisitions respectively. Consistent with the eligible criteria introduced last year, refurbishment or adaptation costs are no longer eligible costs for tenant-in-situ acquisitions. Generally, extensive refurbishments should not be required on these properties. They already benefit from significant Exchequer Fund rent supports through the Housing Assistance Payment or Rental Accommodation Scheme, and critically must comply fully with housing regulations. If refurbishment is required, local authorities need only undertake works necessary to comply with the regulations, effectively ensuring homes are immediately safe, secure and warm. In such cases, local authorities can draw on the significant rental funding available to them through their respective annual budgetary process. Notably, Clare County Council's adopted budget of 2025 suggests only 77% in its rental income would be invested in social housing management and maintenance. Local authorities may also draw on their respective internal capital receipts and the Department of Housing's planned maintenance and voids programme.
You'll be back in. Deputy Cooney.
Thank you, Minister. As far as I can see, the scheme is not working at the moment as good as it has worked in the past. I'm asking you, Minister, to consider a number of things here today to make it work better going into the future. Reinstate the tenant-in-situ scheme to its original state. Failing that reinstation is for properties where refurbishment costs are proportionate to the purchase of often work value, which I think would be important. Provide county-level data on acquisitions that have been declined or not pursued since March 2005 due to the refurbishment cost barrier. Provide data from each local authority of the number of tenants who have presented as homeless following on from the refusal to purchase the property under the scheme. Let us all see the scale of this problem. Minister, the tenant-in-situ scheme was built on a simple principle, keeping families in their homes. The refurbishment exclusion has undermined that principle. So I ask the Minister to restore the old scheme. I think it would work better for people going forward.
Thank you. Minister.
Okay, thank you, Deputy Cooney, and we'll absolutely relay your suggestions here that you've made in your final presentation. Just to conclude on the Minister's response, local authorities have also drawn on their respective internal capital receipts in the Department of Housing's planned maintenance and voids programme, energy efficiency retrofit programme and disabled persons grant schemes to support non-essential works that can be carried out in the long term. In this regard, Clare County Council projected some 600,000 or so would be on hand via its internal capital receipts at the end of 2025, while a further 3.4 million is available to the Council this year through the Department's stock improvement programmes. Ultimately, The delivery of new build social housing at scale is the only strategic solution preventing and alleviating long-term homelessness. According and noting record delivery of new build social housing last year, demand for acquisitions should start to taper off as a greater level of new stock is delivered year on year. But as I said, Deputy, I will certainly relay your suggestions and your observations to the Minister for Housing and ask him to take them up and maybe respond to you as well himself individually.